Chris Noel, welcome back to Fearless in Devotion. It's a special one for me because I'm doing it from probably the best place I've ever done a podcast from. No, it's not Plasmatic. Let me just turn around this camera and see if you can see that. I'm not sure if it's coming out, but that is the bay in St. George's in Grenada, where I currently am. I'm about to jump on a plane, and I've missed a lot of Wrexham stuff this week. I know there's always a lot going on. This week seems particularly fat. What I want to talk about first, Liam, and we will be joined by other people, not just Liam. Don't worry, Tim fans. He's on his way. He's just fluffing some Stockport podcasters. We've also got a special guest, Mark Griffiths, Mr. Wrexham himself. He'll be popping in as well. But Liam, first, tell me about Grimsby. It sounds absolutely idyllic, more idyllic than this setting.
Grimsby, the place, is more idyllic.
Well, that's actually Cleethorpes.
The performance was, yeah. I said it after the game. I was absolutely purring after that performance. It was the most complete performance, certainly, that I've seen so far this season. I mean, Grimsby weren't any great shakes. I was talking to a few of their fans before the game, and when they saw the lineup, they seemed pretty concerned. They said that the likes of Danny Rose are crucial to the way they play attacking wise. And they were
sorry, he's not the Danny Rose that we tried to sign for about 10 years, is he?
I think it is, yeah. I didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure it's that one where we had the deadline day saga where we all thought he was coming and then he buggered off to Aldershot. So yeah, I'm glad he didn't play because I would have booed him to high hell. Yeah, there was a lot of things to like about that performance, really. I was surprised to see Mullin back starting again. I wondered if he might phase him back in more gradually.
So did I.
Looked to give him another half an hour, but even though he didn't score, he had a few chances. He still looked sharp, still very dangerous. Yeah, Elliot Lee carries on scoring yet again. The man can't seem to stop at the minute. Absolutely lethal. There were some people who were saying they didn't think he was in the game as much on Saturday, but if you keep scoring goals like that, who cares, quite frankly? So lots to be pleased about. Bit of a strange atmosphere within the ground compared to when I was speaking to the Grimsby fans before the match. The ones I spoke to were all very friendly, knew about Wrexham's history and background, and all very complimentary. But there was a bit of an edge inside the ground. I'm not sure where that came from. I'm not going to use it to judge all Grimsby fans by, because God knows all fan bases have got their elements. But there was, there's bottles thrown at Mullin. Just a bit of needle, which I might be imagining this, but I don't think I've really seen that between the two fan bases before. Not sure about you.
They've got Grimsby. I went on a Grimsby podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they really zeroed in on Mullin and called him a diver and a cheat from that 5-4 game. And they wouldn't stop talking about it. So I don't know if they particularly target Mullin for that. But even if Mullin did dive in that game, there was about 4 other penalties that we could have got, which we didn't. So it swings and roundabouts, really. It looked good. Hayden played. He played the full 90 minutes.
I would have. I don't know if it's just my weird perception, but I was tempted to give him a man of the match award, really, just because I think we look so much more assured when we've got that fast player who can, carry the ball out at centre back. We just look like a different team when we've got that. It makes you remember really how much he makes us tick and how much we miss him when he's not there. So I'm really glad to see him back again.
I think he helps the wing back as well, because the wing back knows he can bomb on and knows that Hayden can slot in and has got a bit of pace to get back, really. So yeah, I think it's great news that another Hayden injury, which could have ruled him out for the rest of the season, as they seem to do, has actually come to nothing. We just need to nurse him through the rest of this, because he is a quality player. I think that's probably our first choice back three at the moment, isn't it? It's Hayden, Tozer and Boyle at the left centre half. I mean, isn't he our second top goal scorer?
Yeah, I think he might be. That header where it was sort of, had to lean back a bit. That was really good technique on that. I really like him. As I think we mentioned maybe last season that there were too many handsome players in the squad. I'm not saying Boyle's ugly, because he would knock me out, but he's got a bit of rough to him, hasn't he? So He's rugged. He's got rugged good looks. Let's say it that way.
Yeah,
'Cause
I think
otherwise-
he's going to two-foot you next time he sees you. And to be honest, you deserve it.
Probably, yeah, probably. I'm no
So,
all.
I don't want to say you look lovely in that cap. It makes you look like we've got a side parting like Hitler.
Yeah, let's
anyway, enough.
Hitler.
Yeah, enough of that. The next sort of big sort of piece of news is the COP. So it's been a sort of an open secret that they ain't started it, because you can go to the racecourse and see they haven't started it. I read the statement, came out earlier today. I'm glad it's not just putting the blame on one particular facet. Basically, the WST, right? The WST hasn't given over the lease yet. They're still working on it. Nor should they just give over the lease. They have to have safeguards in place, because we know what's happened to us before, that, you know, we need something written in law, because it saved us last time. And we're not saying that Rob and Ryan are going to sell us down the river and, you know, turn us into a B&Q. It's always a B&Q. But who comes next? And you just need that assurance. So yes, they haven't sorted out the leasehold with the WST, and I'd be surprised if they did start the COP until that has been sorted. But there's other issues, isn't there? There's the substation, there's the sewerage. Is there any? What was the fourth thing, Liam?
So there was also, they haven't actually signed the financial agreement with the council yet, but that's basically they're making sure they've got all the ducks in a row. The other thing that they've mentioned is confirmation of the requirements to meet UEFA's Category 4 stadium status. So I think that has to do with the holding of internationals, basically, which is what a lot of the Gateway scheme, the COP scheme, is about, is bringing international football back to Wrexham. So it benefits not just the football club, but, you know, the wider community as well. So they say they're waiting for a report from UEFA, basically to tell them exactly what they need to do to the stadium in order for it to meet that criteria, which sounds eminently sensible, really.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound linked to the COP, really, does it? I mean, the COP is going to be all singing, all dancing. I think it's more linked to, are the changing rooms big enough? Do they have that drug testing room? Are the media facilities good enough? So, yeah, I think that's important, but I don't think that's going to stop the COP being built. You know, we know that COP needs to be built. We know it needs to be as soon as possible. The one thing that I didn't know about is the substation. So is that to do with the flats that are blighting our car park? They just keep coming and punching us in the balls, these flats, don't they? Oh, thank you. So who's building that substation? Are we going to give money to Glyndŵr? Do Glyndŵr do it? Is it anything to do with us? I don't know.
So what it says is that the university has planning permission now to build a new substation. What I'm not clear on, and what I've heard rumours about, nothing, you know, definite, but is that there's uncertainty over who's paying for that. Because I suppose the university could really turn around and say, well, we don't really need to move it, you know, because it's, I think
it works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure that'll all get ironed out, but it's just another thing where you just think, oh, for God's sake, you know, there's always something.
Look, the club will know that this building something like this isn't always plain sailing. I mean, anyone who's done a house extension will know that. Okay, you probably don't have to move a sewer and a substation and buy a lease off a public body, but you know, it takes time. The annoying thing is, you know, we're still selling out this stadium. There's still, you know, demand completely outstrips supply. I know I've been looking on Twitter and a lot of people saying, can we put a temporary stand in there? Like, I mean, I remember going to the Ashes up at Lancashire, and I sat in a temporary stand there. You know, it wasn't perfect, but it does a job. It's not just as simple as erecting that, though, is it? I mean, if you are dealing with this substation and if you are moving this sewer, surely you need access to that area. And also, it's not just putting a stand up there. You need turnstiles, security, you need the ticketing, you need food, beverages, toilets. I mean, where are you going to go to the toilet? Add to that issue that the council keep having about phosphates. It's the last thing we need. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think? I don't think they're going to go down that route, do you?
I think if they'd known it was going to take this long, then perhaps it would have been an option. But to do it now, when they're going to want to hit the ground running as soon as possible, once all these issues are dealt with, I just can't see it, to be honest. Like, I can understand why people are saying it completely, because it's, it's worked for other places, but I think all the effort and all the energy is onto the new cop, and I think getting other rigmarole, there might be licensing requirements, God knows what else. So I think they're probably just going to focus on fixing these issues and whacking that new cop up as soon as possible, whenever that might be for.
Yeah. Right. Apart from that, again, as I say, it's a busy week. Wrexham Women's kicked off, 3-3 draw. Saw some of the goals, some quality goals, some not so quality defending on both sides. But it looked like there was a big crowd there at the Rock. It was televised. Do you know if all the games are going to be televised?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, but it'd be great if they are, because I don't know. I think it just improves access, just lets more people access it who might not necessarily be able to get there. But I was told, I haven't seen the official attendance, but someone reckoned there were easily 600 odd people at the Rock there for it, which, given that I haven't really been playing in front of, other than obviously the final game last season, they haven't been playing in front of big crowds. So I think that can only be a good thing. And it's just great to see it continuing to grow, because that's a pretty good point against Swansea. They're one of the bigger teams in that league.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of time for them to find their feet, because they have come up a division, and they'll be travelling a lot south a lot. But a lot of the big teams from the south will be coming up here, so we can make them events, taking on the likes of Cardiff and so forth. On top, just sort of dovetailing with that, obviously Gemma's really involved with the women's team. There was a bit of bad news about Gareth Owen this week, wasn't there? I think he's been in hospital. So we just wish him all the best, and it was great when he came on for us a couple of, about a year ago now. Some great tales. Everyone who played with him really rates him as a player, but he's also a really good fella, and was brilliant when we had our live night a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, just best wishes to Gareth. Get well soon, mate.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I think our guest might be awaiting us. Does this seem a good point to allow him in?
Let's allow him in.
Right, here we go. This is where the magic happens.
Or not. James McLean interview. Did you see that, Liam?
Yeah, he did two, didn't he? So there was one with RTE News and also one with Sky. I haven't really seen him do too many big interviews like that. And he just seemed quite comfortable talking about it. It made me wonder if he, perhaps he feels accepted at Wrexham, given the really loud chanting of his song. And I just thought he came across really well. He attracts controversy for whatever reason. We all know the issues that have been done to death. But like you said, he's a human being. Sometimes you do daft things. Sometimes you do things like in regards to the poppy, which, he stands by his convictions because he's got his own beliefs and his own reasons. And yeah, I just thought he came across as a really decent person and fascinating to listen to.
No. One person who doesn't cause controversy is Mark Griffiths. How are you, Mark? Can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear. I like to think of myself as fascinating, and I don't cause too much trouble. At least that's what it says on my CV.
Mark, how did you? We just quickly talked about Grimsby. I think probably our most sort of complete performance of the season. How did you view it?
Definitely. It was just, it felt quite comfortable, like the good old days in the National League, didn't it? And I just thought that as a unit, we defended well. We just kept them at arm's length. Howard had a couple of crosses to take. That's about it. And then at the other ends, we troubled them enormously. I think they were a bit naive in that they started with the three at the back when they haven't done that all season. So I think some teams have matched us up, and it's kind of looked like it's worked. But I think if you really look at our games as a sequence, the reason that it hasn't worked isn't to do with matching us up. It's to do with us not quite getting going at the start of the
Yeah.
season, lacking minutes in the legs. So I think if
You've gone quiet there, Mark.
Lost your audio.
Yeah. While Mark, shout when you're back, Mark. While we're waiting for Mark to get back, 2 new episodes, Liam. Have you watched them?
Yes, I did indeed. I devoured them just about on my lunch because there were 2 20-minute episodes this week, so quite short. But what I would say is, what did we describe those episodes as last week? Was it a Jim Whitley?
Yeah, a solid Jim Whitley, a taster of what to come. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I haven't seen them because I'm over here on this paradise island, and even though Welcome to Wrexham is everywhere, it's also on the front of the Standard today. I've had about 16 texts of people who I know from London saying, "Why is this on the front of the Evening Standard?" And I can't give them a bloody answer because I've no idea why it's on the front of the Standard. But I'm glad. I'm glad it is, and I'm glad it's annoying the right people. But yeah, I think we get down to business a little more maybe in the third episode, but the second one's dealing with quite an important subject, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it was entitled The Quiet Zone. So for people who don't know or haven't been to the racecourse, that's the area sort of to the furthest to the Cop end, the town end of the Mould Road stand. And so it focused on Paul Mullin and his son Albie and his fairly recent diagnosis with autism. And then it also featured Millie Tipping, who people on Twitter should know pretty well, who sits in the quiet area, and it was quite emotional, really. I'm just soppy anyway now. Yeah, you become a parent. Did you know I was a parent, Andy?
I had heard it was on the grapevine that you have a child.
But yeah, I don't know. It just makes you a bit soppy, a bit emotional. And there was a couple of moments in the episode. It was really nicely told. Really dovetailed the two stories together. And it just I think it made you realize sort of the human side of a footballer, the different sides of watching a game. It's a different experience. For Millie, for example, for what it might be to me, but also just, I'd say, what the fantastic work that this football club does for all different kinds of audiences, really. So all of that together for, I don't think many people who've watched it will have had a dry eye watching that.
That I love that cliche. Mark, are you back? Are you back? No, we still can't hear you. Mark, maybe if you could come back out and come back in again.
Will do.
Oh, hang on.
You're back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
It must depend where my head is. I'll stay leaning to the side and we'll be fine.
Oh, well, what by design that is. Mark, before we sort of go through the episodes in more detail, I know you feature in one of them quite heavily. Can you take us through your Wrexham journey? Sort of when you sort of got the bug, did you support anyone else, or was there a particular player that got you into the race course and sort of kept you there? Because obviously, we've known you for years doing the commentary up and down the country. It's something that you love to do, even though you've got a busy day job as well. But it hasn't always been this glamorous, has it?
No, I suppose you could say that, couldn't you? They showed part of my explanation of how I got into it on the show today. That basically my neighbour, I'd been playing around in the front garden with whatever. And
you were a keeper, weren't you?
That's what?
You were a keeper, weren't you? Oh, you've gone again.
We've lost the voice.
Mark, we've lost you again. Just say will do. Just say I'm about to go. Work last time. You might have to come out and come back in this time, Mark. Sorry about that. We are going to get to the bottom of this. There's another Andrew Gilpin coming in. There's 3 of us.
I'm seeing double 6 Andrew Gilpins.
Wow, my mum would hate that. Tim, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry, I'm late.
Parky.
Can you is that coming through as in reverse, or can you actually see that normal, or is it mirrored?
Normal.
Can
Very
you?
snazzy.
Lovely. There he is. Old Super Phil.
Yeah. What are you wearing? It looks like a Wrexham sort of dressing gown. Oh no. Yeah, no. I've got that one.
I love it. You own the Wrexham dressing gown as well, it seems. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I do. Yeah. We've just had Mark on, but he's had some audio issues, so he's come out and he's going to come back in again. I'm going to have to go and catch a flight in about 7 minutes, boys. But
max out the 7 minutes. Did you say about the fat ball?
Sponsored by the Fat Ball.
Good one job.
Yeah, I've got lots of jobs. Mark, say something.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes. Get in.
Technical work. Tell you.
Right. Don't move. Do not move for the rest of this.
You'll think I'm frozen, then, won't you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Carry on. So you're in the front garden, your neighbours.
In the front garden, looking for turnips or whatever I did when I was that age. And then my neighbour would come back from the Wrexham game. Now, my dad had watched Wrexham for decades, but wasn't actually watching Wrexham then. And so it just sounded exciting because that was that 77-78 season. So he's coming back saying, oh, yeah, we won 7-0. The players were all celebrating. We won the league. And I started thinking, this sounds intriguing. And so I started getting into it. There was, that was, pretty much last game of the season, but there was one more big game to come. Liverpool playing Bruges in the European Cup final. And so, as kids do, I had Wrexham as my local team and Liverpool as my big team, something which I grew out of. Although my son having the same setup meant I have been to a lot of games at Anfield with him, but, I'm Wrexham through and through.
Don't worry, mate. If someone passes you at the Cop, we won't turn on you.
Fair enough, yeah. So I went through all the fun of the 80s when we were terrible and just declined. I was saying to somebody the other day about my routine on a Saturday afternoon was to meet my mates on a Crispin Lane sign on the corner of the road with Mould Road, 5 to 3. Because there was absolutely no necessity to be there sooner than that. And we'd wander in onto the Cop and we'd be at the back, but to the right of the front line, because we weren't that hard, making up songs about Ollie Cairns and Steve Buxton. And that's basically what it is. I just, you get hooked straight away, don't you? My dad took me at first. He had a bad habit of arriving just slightly late for matches. First 2 games I watched were goalless draws. Third game I went to, there was a goal in the first minute, Mickey Thomas free kick. I didn't see it because we were walking with our backs to the pitch up to our seats. We went to one game where we were 3 minutes late, and we asked the bloke next to us what the score was, and he said it was 2-2.
What?
So, I know, Lincoln City at home. I think it was a Friday for some weird reason. But so I managed to eventually convince my dad we should turn up at the right time. And it's all been hunky-dory since then, apart from most of the football.
Yeah. I mean, who's you, since you've been watching them since the 70s? Then who's your favourite player? It could be a cult player. It doesn't have to be Paul Mullin or anyone like that. I mean, for me, it's always been Carl Connolly, just because I love the way he played football and where he came from.
Hence the t-shirt. But for me, it's not going to be one of those great 70s players, for the simple reason I think at that point I didn't understand football that much. I was as excited by the pretty colours and stuff like that. I suppose one player from that era, but after the great team, Steve Fox, was just ludicrously entertaining to watch. He's just a slightly chubby winger who, when he turned it on, was great fun. I once watched him in a reserve game being refereed by a bizarrely camp referee with a very big blonde perm. And he just kept giving fouls against Fox for no reason. And so in the end, Fox just got sick of it and just had the ball, turned and just thumped it straight into the ref's stomach from about 10 yards away. And the ref didn't send him off, incredibly.
Wow.
But when you hear all the off-field stories about him afterwards, you realise, yeah, he was a hell of a character both ways around. But I think my all-time favourite was Jim Steele. He was in the early to mid-80s. He scored a goal against Porto that beat them at the racecourse, and I just loved him. He was so physical in a time we were allowed to get away with that sort of thing. Big, sort of sharp-shouldered centre forward that nobody wanted to mark. And he went on loan to Deportivo La Coruña from us, because basically that season he did so well against Porto and then Roma. I mean, let's be honest, frankly, football was different then. And English and British teams would do well, partly, I think, because they were rough. European teams tended to be more the cliched, keep it on the floor, move it around. And then the British teams would come and rough them up. And that's why I think that's part of why Wrexham did so well against such good teams. So, yeah, they saw what he was doing to Roma's defenders and Porto's defenders, and they brought him in on loan till the end of the season.
How did that go?
Yeah, I don't think he scored any.
Right.
But it's just, yeah, he was great. Real committed scrapper. Scored goals as well. Some target men don't really, they're more working to hold the ball up, aren't they, or to help you on. But he scored a good number of goals. His legs were weirdly thin for the size of his body as well, which I always found slightly intriguing.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm at school. I feel like I'm in Mark's history class.
Yes, right, yeah.
I've just learned that we loaned that a player to Deportivo La Coruña. That's blown my mind.
Because there were players at a higher level, but Mark Hateley was like an England international. He was a decent player, please don't get me wrong. But he wasn't a proper full-on vicious target man, I didn't think. He was a bit too skillful for my 1980s mentality. But he went to Milan and he was tremendously successful, because they weren't used to that. Sort of pretty tough, pretty awkward bloke, not an all-out eye-gouging Jim Steele.
I mean, we've always had these sort of strange stories around the club. I'm sure every club has, but Wrexham just seems to collect them a little bit more than anyone else. And I think that's probably why the documentary has been so successful. I'm going to have to shoot off soon, fellas. So I'm going to leave you in Liam and Tim's comfortable hands. Just before I go, why do you think that Americans especially have really taken to the documentary and hence the club? Because I know that you've got a massive fan club over in the States. You nearly need to go on the next tour because you won't buy a drink. But why do you think it's connected so much?
Me. Next question. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think firstly the show is about community and about heart. It's not one of these just corny behind the scenes, there's dozens of them out there, sort of documentaries. I think that it has weeded out the, shall we say, the Trump supporters who might watch it in the States, because they'd have no interest in that sort of thing. And so we're left, and obviously I don't want to generalize, but my experience backs this up. We're left with a lot of people who have watched the show, loved the heart that's in it, loved that sense of people pulling together, loved the underdog thing, and and they're sorry, but they're decent-minded. That sort of thing appeals to them. And then when they've come in, I do think we've been quite lucky. I mean, I'm saying that as a commentary team, because our style has always been, quite specific, really, that when it comes to the game, we're more descriptive than other professional radio channels. That's just my prejudice. I'm sick of putting the radio on and they're going through their notes or telling us what the next game will be while you can hear the crowd going nuts in the background. And I've always hated that. So we always try, when the ball's in play, we're maybe a bit too descriptive, but I think that's maybe not a bad thing. And I think that suited new fans of the game, because since we've gone on the stream, they've been saying, but they quite like that little helping hand. I always thought we wouldn't work on the stream because we are too descriptive, but actually it seems like a lot of the audience want that sort of thing. And also we're naturally anecdotal. We want to tell stories. We want to act stupid. We were doing that before the takeover. And of course, coincidentally, that's the sort of thing the people who have got into the show want, because we're quite homespun. and you know, we know the tales, and so we've filled in gaps for people who want gaps filled in. So I think it's coincidental, but our way of doing it, I think, has helped. And then once the streaming took off, I mean, yeah, I think lots of people just talked anyway. But no, I just think that, like I said, seriously, I think that narrowing down process of the audience in America has left us with a lot of people who, if they want to commit to following us, they're making a commitment, and it's, you know, they want to chip in, which is, that's brilliant. I mean, it's amazing.
I mean, I'm not sure what Andy Gilpin's views are on US politics, but when you had the slight dig at the Trump supporters, I noticed he disappeared. So
yeah.
I mean, we could probably just assume...
He was put on his "Make America Great Again" cap as he left.
Yeah, I've always had those suspicions about him, I'll be honest with you. But
yeah, it's interesting you say about the connection, though, because I can't speak for US fans, but when I'm listening to commentary as well, one of my biggest frustrations, especially listening to Wrexham, because every game just feels like a nail biter. The amount of times you're just shouting, "Where's the ball? Where's the ball on the pitch at the moment?" That's all I want to know, so I can visualize in my head, are we just about to concede a 90th minute equaliser or something?
You're the same as me then, because like I said, if I'm honest, people often say to who your favorite commentators, and I generally say nobody, because commentators annoy me, and I do fully accept I annoy people as well. I you know, you do something to an extreme, you will annoy people, and I accept and I totally agree with their rights to not like it. You know what I mean? It's absolutely fair enough. It's a matter of taste. But I'm the same as you. It's like, I've always tried. Now, I'm not saying I succeed, but I've always tried to make sure I'm mentioning the time, because the number of times, like I say, you're following a game on Twitter or something, and it's like, yeah, but what minute is it? You know, is there 5 minutes now? You know, you don't know from your watch, do you? Because games have all sorts of, you know, different factors that pull the time around a bit. And like you say, I really try to say, like, 30 yards out or whatever, just to try to give a bit of a picture. You know that thing about where the phrase "back to square one" comes from? Apparently, it's that when they first started doing radio football commentaries, they'd publish a pitch split into sections, and there'd be another person, not the commentator, in the background saying square two to say where the ball was, square four, back to square one. And supposedly that's where that phrase came from. And I don't think that's an awful idea. I'm not going to start us doing it. That would be weird. But I don't think that's the worst idea, just to help people imagine it. You know what I mean?
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
You channeled your James Alexander Gordon then for a second. There was like 4 seconds. And for anybody who doesn't know that is, you should do. Yeah. 4, 5. Yeah. So many questions to ask. First thing for me, as an advocate for swearing, how have you never swore on a broadcast? Or if you have, can you remember when you did and what you said?
I really don't think I have.
That takes some doing that. Is that something that's instilled as a teacher, and you've taken that disciplined aspect into it? Because I dare say, working with children and working as a commentator, you must have do you have a stress ball in your pocket? Do you have a voodoo doll? How does it work where you need to burst with that frustration, but you choose not to do it in that manner?
I think there's a few factors in this. I do think my mum and dad were not keen on me swearing. So I think I've sort of grown up not as a default, you know, sort of swearing anyway. You
were brought up, not dragged up.
I was, oh, that's beautiful. But I'm dragging myself back down now, to be fair. I never thought about the teacher thing, but that could well be a factor, because I must be honest, my dad was a teacher, and he always told me, never be angry with the kids. If you feel upset or angry about something, walk away. Talk to them when you're calm. And if you are telling them off, it's acting. And he's 100%, it was 100% right. It's the best advice I was ever given. I actually feel, and this may be a weird answer to your question, actually, when I think about it, I've always thought I'm lucky. I'm sort of hardwired to not take what the kids do seriously. Do you know what I mean? Kids make mistakes. Kids are growing up. That they're allowed to. So I've never really got upset by something a kid would do, even doing head of year stuff where I'm having to sort out discipline and things like that. So I think that's partly my personality, and I think the football side of it is partly that. I think I'm quite lucky. I think I've got the sort of personality where I put things in perspective. I could be wrong, but I'm sort of thinking, okay, this isn't good. There's another game on Tuesday, so maybe in the back it's that sort of mentality. But a lot of people do ask me, why don't I just get upset? And I think it's also partly because I see it as a job. I've got to try my best. Whether I succeed or not, okay, I don't know, but I try my best to try and get across what's I think's genuinely happening. And I think because I've got that job mindset, I don't think I react too far either way, which is nice when we're doing badly, because I think it doesn't hurt me too much. And it's sort of not that nice in a way when we're doing well, because I can't go nuts. Well, I'll go a bit nuts, because I think, the audience want that. It's a Wrexham commentary. But yeah, I think it's partly personality, partly upbringing. I think it's genuinely true. And partly just that I think I see myself as having a job. I'll shout at the telly when there's teams playing that I don't care about. And yet I don't with Wrexham for some weird reason. But I do care, honest.
Yeah. But you must be like a rarity. I can't think of many people who've gone to watch Wrexham and never cussed. Maybe Annette Gardner. She strikes me as the sort of person that wouldn't really turn the air blue.
Yeah, she's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. That takes some restraint, that. Fair play. Do you have you got like pre-match for the players, they got a pre-match sort of routine. Yeah. Do you have a pre-commentary routine, and do you have any pre-commentary superstitions?
Right, no superstition. Okay. I ditched superstition when I was about 12 because I realized it didn't work. Earlier than that, a couple of years earlier than that, Wrexham played West Ham in the FA Cup third round. Oh, it was one of my favourite moments as a Wrexham fan. They'd won the FA Cup the previous year, and then their first game defending it is against us. We draw at West Ham. Yeah. We then draw at the racecourse, extra time, still a draw. And I do understand why they can't do this anymore. But as a kid, I used to love the long drawn-out FA Cup ties that go to like a 4-3 play. They were amazing. And the tension was brilliant. And so they toss a coin at the racecourse, and we won the toss. So we're going to host the second replay. That's 0-0. Goes into extra time. We've used our one substitute. Only one sub then. Always blows my mind now thinking back to that.
You remember who it was?
I don't remember who it was, but I do remember that as a consequence of the change, Dixie had to go to left back. So it must have been Alan Dwyer who'd gone off then, the left back. And we've got a striker on the bench. So they've just put Dixie at left back and whoever, Steve Buxton or whoever up front. And Dixie scores with I think it's about 10 minutes left of added time. And I'm sitting there panicking because my watch strap had broken on that day, and I didn't think and went out without a watch, and I wanted how long's left, and I've got no watch. And West Ham battered us. They battered us and battered us, and somehow they didn't score, so we knocked them out of the cup. And it was like, I was just so happy. And then I thought, this obviously happened because I haven't got my watch on. That's clearly I was a decisive factor. So for about 2 years, I didn't wear a watch to a football match. I used to get stressed every game because I didn't know what time it was. And when it occurred to me when we got relegated twice that maybe the no watch strategy didn't influence football results. And I think since then I've just decided I'm not really superstitious. Stupid watch. Although I'm not wearing a watch now, I see, just to make sure that it all goes well. And then routine. My pre-match routine is to get upset with the equipment. I get all my stress out, that's it. I get my stress out before the game, that's what it is. There's always some weird little glitch that'll happen, and it's always completely random. I set the kit up in exactly the same way as I have done for years, and there'll always be one little thing wrong, and you can't always work it out, and it really drives me at the wall. And I've had people who know what they're talking about looking at it and saying, yeah, that's right. Why does it all come out wrong? It's partly as well because the lines we have to use, the ISDN lines, they are fragile, and so that always makes me a bit nervous. So yeah, I'll go for a coffee in the morning, and maybe have a little look at the other team. But I've usually done it before Saturday, and then I'll go to the game early, set up, weep into the mixer desk, and chat to everybody, and then suddenly we're on air. That's basically it.
In terms of the audience for your broadcast, it was interesting on today's second episode of the documentary, hearing you talk about going from the hospital radio broadcasts. I mean, when you were doing that, you can't have ever envisaged that you would be doing it to such a global audience. What's that, I guess, that transition been like for you? And you're obviously quite active on social media. So I think you've probably seen through that, how it's changed over time as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, doing it in the hospital radio, you just had no idea if anyone was listening, to be honest. But having said, it was still gratifying, because if one person's listening and it's making their stay in hospital a bit better, well worth it. But yeah, absolutely. And when we started off Ask Wrexham, now we can't get through them. It's impossible during a match. And that's why I've done the extra podcast. And even then, I can't get through them all. But when we started it before the takeover, we'd usually get about 20 a match from 5 or 6 loyal people. And if there was a big home game with a big crowd, literally on occasions, we'd get none. And so that's a big difference, just that. I like the interactivity, but gosh, it's hard to keep on top of it, because you want to answer questions. And there's some really good questions as well that really make you think. So it's really changed. Absolutely. I must admit, oh God, this is making, I'm starting to feel I'm a freak. Because to be honest with you, I feel I've taken the massive change and the weirdness of it all sort of in the stride. I've just sort of feel like I've just carried on doing what I'm doing. And I know that sounds odd, but yeah, I don't think the things are really, the two things that really hit me were that I've always, and my wife, my lad, we've always been massive Always Sunny fans for years. And so I'd heard Ryan Reynolds was one of the two people, and I'd never actually seen a Ryan Reynolds film before the takeover. I have now, but I knew full well who he was, but I'd never seen any of his films. But I didn't know Rob was the other one. And Ollie Williams, who was also a big Always Sunny fan, it was leaking out, wasn't it? And so the announcement was a bit early. And so he said, this is the name of the other person. Don't say it until half time. It's getting announced like 7:45. And I opened a piece of paper and it said Rob McElhenney. And I just looked at him. I just thought, he's taking the mick here. Come on. He knows I'm a fan. Come off it. But it was real. And that bit really blew my mind. Him phoning me here, I think, blew my wife's mind more, because we knew he was calling at some point in the day. I look at my phone rings, look at my phone, number withheld, Belvedere Hills, California, and I'm thinking, that could be him. And I answered it, and my wife was silently dancing around me with excitement. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't concentrate. My wife's a big fan and she's going mad. And he said, oh, give her the phone. So I gave her the phone, and they had a lovely 10-minute chat about cats. So that was her mind-blowing moment. And my other mind-blowing moments, I know it shows how trivial this is, and it's not logical. My mind's clearly not logical. When I found somebody told me, oh, I saw you on IMDb. I was like, what? And that felt more weird than a lot of the other stuff. Just that, on that? Huh? It just was so peculiar that I was. So I don't know, that all the rest of it seems to just, I'm just accepting this is logical. Rich people have taken over. Everything's great. They bring their rich friends. That feels, I don't know, somehow it feels normal. I don't think I think straight, do I? This is good psychiatry. Thank you.
Was it at that stage when you saw the IMDb entry that you employed your agent?
Oh, don't you worry, mate. I'm still on 100% and nothing. I occasionally, I called myself, it's a joke that I called myself Disney's Mark Griffiths on Twitter, obviously. I do still occasionally get people saying, why are you calling yourself Disney's? And I think, oh, I have to explain this. It's not, to someone who really doesn't get why I've done that. It's a bit tricky to sum up in like whatever 140 characters,
Apart from that wild American who's now got your face tattooed on their backside and it's got Disney's Mark Griffiths written underneath it. If you haven't done that yet, I reckon there is definitely a member, a high-ranking member of the Mark Griffiths Appreciation Society US branch that is happy to get your face tattooed somewhere on their body.
So
I dare one of you. Double them.
The one with me on their backside, obviously my expression is the sort of, I would assume, but
I just got visions of the Alan Partridge moment, you know, when he rips his shirt open and there's a picture of him. So that would be high end. That would be good. So
and then I'd have to explain where we are by saying just off the M56. Like Alan Partridge of it.
Just bringing sort of background to the documentary, because we obviously started chatting about this week's 2 episodes. So you were involved in the second one, the Notts County one. How did you find the one before that, the one about the quiet zone?
It's beautiful, wasn't it? You know, I'm not saying that lightly, to just strip away all our biases about our team. That was just a lovely half hour of television, wasn't it? You know, I mean, you know, Albie's clearly a fantastic lad, and he's clearly got fantastic parents, and it doesn't matter who they are. That was just wonderful. I liked how that element of it was mixed in with the fans of other teams' perception and talking about, you know, these people are people. I really liked that. And then I loved at the end when they were showing other teams' fans being positive about us, because I've got to say personally, I think because I'm fortunate we get so much social media involvement now, I only have really time to look at the stuff that's directed to me, and people are lovely. So I don't tend to see much of the negative stuff. And I've got to say that I know there's loads of it, I know, and that's natural, like they said in the show, you know, someone else is lucky, I want to be lucky. But the almost 100% people I talk to, opposing press, you know, opposing fans, just general football fans, all just unequivocally say, this is brilliant. You've got great owners. I've seen loads of people on social media take people down who are moaning, who are not our fans, just saying, but these are the dream owners. Have a go at bad owners, not them. So I was glad they showed that, because that genuinely is my experience. And then Millie, of course, is just an absolute legend. She was living at large at the game on Sunday, I can tell you, you know, but it's just brilliant. But it was so, her mum was so good, and she was so good at talking it through. Because again, being in education, I will see plenty of kids with autism and other situations that make it difficult for them socially, or difficult to connect to people. You know, so I've seen all that. I've done the training, but that really, I thought, encapsulated it brilliantly, just to any audience of, this is what it is, and it isn't, as she said, it's a superpower. It was just great, and a bit of Kerry's work as well. It was just lovely, wasn't it? It was so moving.
Yeah, you do feel, like I said before, you do feel, you don't really realise, I think, until you take a step back, just how much this club does to cater for all different varieties of fans, you know, through Kerry's work, through the DSA's work that, you know, preceded it. It's, you know, it's quite immense, really. You don't see that at Premier League level with a lot of clubs.
No, it is superb. I always tell people who visit about the whole, you know, Tanny Gray and everybody talking about us in the House of Lords, and essentially, let's be honest, us being used in the House of Lords as a stick to beat Premier League teams with, because we had, you know, we had better facilities than Premier League grounds, and I don't mean in proportion, I mean in absolute terms. You know, we had more wheelchair spots than Man United. And they hold 77,000. That's a joke. So I've always been proud of that, and yeah, but it's amazing. I mean, Kerry is beyond belief for me. I can't, the variety and breadth of what she's done, even before the owners came in, just jaw dropping as far as I'm concerned. Astonishing.
Yeah, that episode, there's a double bill, packed so much into both, and I tell you, it was a struggle when I saw Mull's eyes watering constantly, and it was like, I put a tweet out before. I remember when when he came to us and people were saying he's going there for the money, he's the big marquee sign, of course he's going for money. And he went on record to say, well, I'm going because I want to be closer to my family. And even you'd still get detractors there and go, no chance, no chance. It's the money first. If you had any doubts, for those people who had any doubts, you watch that episode and you can be in no frame of mind other than knowing that he is very much, this is my family. This bit just happens to help my family live a very, very nice lifestyle. I'm doing everything I can for my son. And the whole thing, that interaction he had with Ryan about counting the fruit and how much that meant to him. And it was just like, and the good thing about this was it didn't really teach you to suck eggs about autism. It didn't tell you why Millie needed the 8 defenders.
Yeah.
So if you want to go and find out why, go and Google about it, learn a bit more about autism and how it is very much a superpower, as opposed to being classed as a disability anyway. So it was delivered in such a heartfelt way, and yeah, it's one of those I want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But it was a tough watch in the very best way possible, if you know where it come from. It was just, yeah, it was a proper heart tugging one, that I think.
And you're right there, aren't you? It was very skillful the way it was told. It wasn't ramming stuff down your throat. It did something more important. It created empathy.
Yeah,
I mean, you see people as people, and that's the more, like you say, that's the more effective way to make somebody understand rather than get technicalities thrown at you. Absolutely right. I thought when it was really sensitively handled, and when you see certain sniffy comments about us, say in the media, you look at the way they handled Mullin breaking down and how they kept that in, obviously with his permission. The way he handled it was just perfectly, in that he's not ashamed to cry in front of them. And he said, these things happen, and I have to deal with it. And he showed such genuine strength in being able to say that and in showing that. And it was really, it would have been the easiest, laziest thing in the world to have trimmed that out. But I think that bit said a lot about his love for his boy. So no, I just thought it was so well done. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it showed a depth of character that I don't think you get to see from footballers in a lot of the new sort of, there's plenty of documentaries out there, but I haven't seen that many where I've got such an insight into the character of a footballer. I mean, you must get some insight into that, because when you're a fan, I think sometimes it's quite detached, isn't it? There's a separation sort of physically there for you, but speaking to them, you must get some insight into what they're like as people. And from what I've seen in this documentary, I don't think there's many players you couldn't say come across as thoroughly decent human beings, really.
Absolutely. Although ironically, I don't have that as much of that insight as I'd like in a way, for the simple reason that after the match we do the podcast, so it's a long time since I've done the actual player interviews as such. But I do love, I don't really enjoy, if I'm honest, that situation, because you both know what it's like. You have to go along a sort of, are you happy you won? Are you sad you lost sort of line? And that really doesn't help anybody to come out with it. But those are the quotes people demand, so it is sort of tricky. It is much nicer. But with Dragonheart, I've been able to do some with old players, some of whom I've never spoken to, some of whom I've sort of known fairly well-ish, but not that well. And it's been brilliant just to talk to them as people and ask them their human reaction to stuff. And also, the most gratifying thing, I float a lot of my lunatic theories to them, and a lot of them tend to be right. I'll say, you know what, I thought this didn't work because, or this bloke here, was he? And they'll be like, yeah, actually, yeah, you're quite right. I was like, oh, because I thought I was mad. So, yeah, I got a few odd ones out of them. But yeah, I love that sort of interviewing. But I don't get that much chance now. I'll bump into them in the corridor, and like you say, they're a nice bunch of lads. I don't think I recall a Wrexham squad that weren't, if I'm perfectly honest with you.
They are just human beings at the end of the day. And something I'm quite interested in is sort of the mechanics of how the documentary works. I mean, I think most people who've got any basic knowledge of media will know that you do quite a lot of hours of, recording compared to what we actually see on the screen. How much have you been involved, I guess, from day one with it?
Right. They came into the school and filmed an entire lesson. I stopped it about 20 minutes early because they were coming round to talk to the kids as well about the impact of the town. So they did that. They came into the school again during a holiday, and we did like about a 2-hour interview, and that's the stuff that came out in that Notts County episode of me perched on a chair like some sort of obese owl looming towards the camera. They've come to my house a couple of times, and that was cool. But those both would have been about an hour, I would think. And occasionally they've caught me somewhere and taken the opportunity just to get a bit more material to see what they want. So, for example, I went to one of the women's games at Ponky when the cameras were there, and so they just thought, "Yeah, can you have a quick word about this? Just might fit in, might not, that sort of thing." Fully aware that most stuff I'll have said will end up on the cutting room floor. That's what it's like. But they are brilliant to do stuff with. I tell you what I will say is that, people thinking it's staged, that certainly hasn't been my experience. Don't get me wrong. They've prompted me in terms of the sort of subject you want me to talk about, but they've not, they've not said, "Oh, please, can you say this? Please, can you say that?" They've let me say what I want to say. And that's been quite pleasing. I felt in the first series that it did reflect well what I've experienced myself being partially on the inside, and likewise so far this one as well. But they certainly haven't been, saying, please can you make that cup of tea again, not that sort of stuff. Or except that bit they showed when I set up equipment, that took ages. It really took ages because I was genuinely setting up equipment, and I was also having to hang on, that's not going to work. Oh god! But they're filming me, so I better carry on. So that took quite a while, and it's no surprise to me. But yeah, that's like 10 seconds worth of material in it. me unlocking the gate and
Have the kids treated you differently yet? Are you expecting a bit of stick or?
I don't think I'll get a stick, but I can handle it. Don't worry, if necessary. I'll come out on top of that one. Just a little warning to any kids listening. No, they're lovely. They just get really excited. I showed them because Josh Williams, a lad who left this year, actually, he's year 11 last year, was at the very start of the first episode.
Yeah.
And I was just chuffed because he's there in his uniform, and I thought the kids will love that. When I showed the older kids, and I said, look at this. Remember this guy from last year? Look at him he's on TV. And it's in here, and they were looking and they loved it in the way I thought they would. When I showed little first years, they just kept screaming, "That's you in the background! That's you in the background!" I was like, yeah, I know that. I'm saying, look at him.
Were you not prompted to hover in the background and look busy? You're like, just have a look, check the course, man.
That was genuine, although it did look like I was going, big smiles. Yes, you boy, it did look a bit like that, but I'm afraid that's how I am a bit in class. No, I think it's just that, wasn't that big a room. We got all the kids at the front to give room for the cameras, so it was hard to get out their eyeline, I think, to be honest with you. I really tried. When they talk to the kids, I genuinely tried to stay as far away from the camera as possible, because I would be absolutely happy for one of the kids to slate me and then use it. I don't mind. I don't care. But I didn't want to hear anything or make them feel they've got to say a certain thing because I'm there. If they want to say, "Don't really think this takeover's done much for the club," that's fine by me. But so I didn't want to be looming right next to them, so they felt they couldn't speak their mind, And of course, I don't know what they did say. They all enjoyed it. They loved it. And
Mark,
then,
sorry.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the women a second ago. You were at the Adran Premier Bow the other day, 6-goal thriller. You were there. You were commentating on it. What was your thoughts on that? That was a bit of a rip-roaring kind of game. Do you think they'll acclimatise themselves fairly straightforward to this division? I think, but on that evidence, I would suggest so.
I would too. I mean, you look at the recent history of that league, and it's Cardiff and Swansea. You look at last season, Cardiff won it, and they were a good distance ahead of Swansea, but they were a good distance ahead of third place. So, you know, you're talking about those two teams really are not the level to be measured against in terms of survival, but to be measured against in terms of winning the thing or getting in that final top 4 league. Well, you know, I mean, we should have won it. I do accept that Swansea, I thought, you know, they had a lot more of the ball than we did. They missed a lot of good chances, but, you know, that's irrelevant. We were as dangerous as them in a different way. We soaked a lot up. We hit them on the break. I think in that level of women's football, I know this is going to sound stupid, but the straight ball over the top is more effective than the man's game, where Okonkwo launches the ball straight down the middle and it fizzes straight through to the keeper. But, you know, Louisa Doran, she can strike a ball, but it was sort of dying 40 yards out from the other side's goal. That's what Rosie Hughes wants to run onto. So we look so dangerous going forwards with pace. We'll score plenty of goals. And so, yeah, I would. That made me think, okay, you can see Swansea are a really quality, well-grooved side. They were in the Champions League last year. They should be. But we've got the firepower to hurt teams like that, and we've got a basis to build on, and actually be at a Swansea or Cardiff level soon, I think. I loved it. It was brilliant. Great game as well. But then every Wrexham game's a great game, isn't it? At the moment, everything's heartbreaking or heart-stopping.
Imagine if they secured Champions League football in their first season. Because I know Gemma Owen, when she came to a Grosvenor Reds meeting, she said that was obviously one of the ultimate for long-term goals, and they're kind of on schedule for what they're trying to do at the moment. They've raised the profile, obviously, with the aid of Robin Ryan's backing. Where do you think they can take this? Because you kind of obviously the women's game has exploded probably in the last 10 years or so, you know, bigger than it's ever been now. And you look at the likes of Arsenal and so on getting huge attendances. We've even set the bar ourselves to a certain extent with that sellout crowd last season. So how do you think it will pan out? How do you think it will develop in terms of where the team goes, where it branches out to, I guess?
I'm going to take the optimistic line, because to me that feels like the more likely line, really. I think this season, I think we suggested in that match that we could aim for that top 4 end bit of the season. I think Cardiff and Swansea will have the experience and quality that, you know, it may take a year or so to build up to that level. Maybe not. I don't know. But I do think that's what we're heading towards. Because, you know, you look at that team, I think, I mean, I don't make any attempt to hide the fact that women's football in Wales is at quite a developmental stage. I have personal views I won't go into now about how the efficacy of the FAW being the body that nurtures that. I think they make some odd decisions, but it's still in an earlier stage, and therefore, although I was impressed by the women's team last year, I thought there is a possibility that because the Welsh FA haven't allowed more teams into the top division, that there's a big cliff to fall off, and that it's all very well us playing North Walian teams that will go to that and get our backsides handed to us on a plate. I don't feel that anymore after watching Sunday. I'm so, yeah, with the investment that's coming into it. And like I was trying to say, I lost my train of thought. I was saying about there's only 2 debutants in that team. That was the team in the second level last year. So that tells you something about the quality of players that were already at the club. It's not, you know, Nottingham Forest saying, all right, we better buy another 24 players now because they were good enough for the Championship, but they wouldn't cope in the Premier League.
Kind of mirrored the men's team, haven't they, in terms of buying, recruiting smartly to take on that division head on straight away.
And the 2 centre-backs that making the debuts was superb. I mean, Doran was out of this world, and Allen was just looked such a steady, strong influence in defence. And then Kerry Acopoulos comes on her debut, scores. So yeah, exactly. You can see that those levels coming in, couldn't you? Here's a way to upset Wrexham fans. I kind of see our aim as being actually pulling off what TNS thought they could pull off in the men's team. That, you know, we're in the Welsh system, unashamedly. We would not have interest in going into the English system, but we could perhaps set ourselves up as extremely strong and expecting to go for the title every season and being quite regular in the Champions League. And with the money that comes in from that, you know, we may be able to, you know, really develop further. And okay, big fish in a small pond, but it's also important pioneering work. Like I've said this a number of times, I just feel that if the FAW play this right and take advantage of our growth, we could be the one country in Europe where the women's league is more important than the men's league. No offence to the League of Wales, but that crowd at the racecourse was it 3 times more than any League of Wales crowd? You know, so go figure. You know, I mean, we could really achieve something remarkable, and then yeah, if you're a big fish in a small pond, so be it.
I'd love to know if TNS chairman Mike Harris would be raising a glass of wine to that comparison now, or chucking it at his laptop in disgust.
Well, either of them's fine by me. He can afford a new laptop, can't he?
He can.
I smashed Geraint Parry's laptop once, changing the subject completely. I was sitting next to him in the press box. I really can't remember where it was. I want to say Altrincham, but I picture it. It's not Altrincham. I don't know where it was. And the ball, I was sitting next to him, the ball was smashed straight at me. And, you know, being the greatest goalkeeper in the history of European football, I instinctively got up and punched it away, but punched it sideways straight into his laptop. And just, possibly the greatest moment of my life.
What did he say? Because like Geraint to me, he's such a calm, assuring, Mr. Wrexham, placid. But I've seen him get angry, and I've never been so terrified of anybody in my entire life. He's like, you just light the fuse, and he's just like one spark away from literally, like, you know, wasting 20 people within earshot. He's just terrifying when I've seen him angry.
He said, "Oh, never mind." Essentially, so yeah, I'm on his good list, so he wasn't going to go for me.
Go for that.
It was a good punch anyway. I mean, I think he admired it.
Just going to bring it on to fiery exchanges and just bringing it back to sort of the second episode of this week review. What did people make of that Paul Mullin and Tozer? Because I've heard some people are like, "Oh God, that was really fiery." And I don't know. I just thought that's two teammates in a high pressure situation, a changing room where everyone's really keen to get to this goal of promotion. But I thought it was good they left it in though, because again, you don't always get to see that in, you know, modern documentaries, do you?
I think that is so true and sums up why this show works. It's a program made by our owners to benefit our club, but they recognize that they can't do a sort of North Korean propaganda job on it. They actually are willing to show it warts and all. And I can also imagine, despite the agreements Tottenham say or Arsenal will have had with Amazon, I can also imagine that if something like that happened to that extent, they'd be straight away saying, right, well, we're vetoing that. And yet we've left her in, and he dead right. And it is nothing. Well, I say it's nothing. It's good, I think. I mean, going back to Dean Keats, the idea that he would bring in character as well as good players, that he brings in Pearson, because if you don't match Sean Pearson's standards, he'll tell you in no uncertain terms, and you will make sure you do it right next time. And I feel that Tozer's essentially doing that. Mullin has every right to stand up for himself as well. There's nothing significant in him exchanging words whatsoever. That happens in every changing room, everywhere. If it doesn't, it means they don't care. So for me, that was great. People may, of course, people will try and make something else of it. Well, I mean, if they hate each other so much, why do they clearly get along so well? Why do they keep playing in the same successful team? You know, nah.
I think we needed that different point of view, because we've seen Parky get angry and Parky's enthusiasm counter. We've never really seen any tension between the players. But they had to show that because clearly it was such a big game and there was so much riding on it, even at that stage. You know, early in the season, first versus second, almost like a 6-pointer early on. And to come out of it having lost, there was always going to be, they weren't going to walk in and go, oh, well, never mind, we've still got plenty of the season to go.
Yeah.
It showed straight away. It was like just the frustration of couldn't quite get it over the line and didn't quite heed Parky's advice on the film review. I think his line was smother the life out of him.
Yeah.
Or to that effect. So I think it was right to show it. And to be honest, in my head, if there's not five or six little differences of opinion like that during most games, I'd be very surprised because you're always striving to get the best out of one another.
Yeah. I mean, I agree completely, and it is again. They've got that ring of authenticity in the way that they interact, and I think that's great. Rather than, like you said, trying to do a snow job on it, and also, I thought it was really skillful that they really gave me a sense of a recollection, if you will, of what that game was like, because that game, you know, without drawing it out and leaving it on for ages, which I don't think would work with a modern audience. They did sum up that game should have been 5-5. We can imagine a game ending 5-5. It was just they missed. Well, we missed easy chances, and Mark Howard was his best game of the season. I thought last year he was absolutely outstanding, and both sides could easily have said we should have scored at least 3 or 4 in that match. And I thought they summed it up by showing Howard making a really good double save, by showing that failure of Mullin to pass it, to showing that confrontation. Yeah, it did sum up exactly how that game felt. And that was, I think, a very skillful thing to do in the matter of 2 minutes. It's felt like a spurned opportunity. I like that.
I think it was probably the episode where, would we say that you featured the most? I know last season we had the Mark Griffiths noisometer. I wish that would have returned for this season, really. I found that quite entertaining.
I reckon you swore in that somewhere, but we couldn't make it out. I reckon if you took that to the police and they deciphered it, there'd be a swear word in there.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what happened with that, and I've got to say, you know, cut this out if you start thinking, "Oh God, he's telling this story again," please. But that winning goal, I mean, we went crazy, and I sent it straight into the club because I just thought this has got the potential to go viral, and it did get a hell of a lot of traction on social media. But I've got to be honest, I sent it in because of what my co-commentator, Andy Parkinson, said. Because basically the ball went in, I went just insane, just screaming, like, yes, 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 over and over. And then after all the insanity ended, and actually he's doing it as well. He's the more high-pitched one you can hear. He's just going, but then when it all calms down and I finish screaming, he very calmly goes, in case you haven't guessed, Wrexham have scored. I thought that was the line. That was why I sent it in. And I think, understandably, when they trimmed it down, maybe I didn't say that's the line. They left that out. And I was so glad that the actual Welcome to Wrexham left his line in, because that was beautiful. All the insanity and then him being terribly dry. That was the thing that made it good. I thought it was crazy, wasn't it? I don't know.
Timing. What was it? I mean, you've said that you sort of take it in your stride, but how did you feel watching that today? I'm assuming that you've sat down and watched it.
It did feel a little different because it was actually me sat down doing it rather than just voiceovers, if I'm honest. I might as well say it. Terrible confession. But I think I was a little bit like excited without fully realizing it, because a couple of times I said something and I laughed out loud. And I was like, don't laugh at yourself. But I did it again about 5 minutes later. I was like, don't do that. That's an awful thing to do. But yeah, it was sweet, you know. Emma, my wife, was watching it as well, and she was chuffed with it. But yeah, it was fun. It was really, really fun. And just strange, because I was sort of thinking which bits will stay in, which bits won't, just out of curiosity. Those photos as well, I gave them those photos to use, and they were really effective, and there were some doozies in there. Tell you what. I couldn't find the picture of me as a 10-year-old in my tight-fitting, shiny Adidas shirt. And I have found it since, and I'm really annoyed. I wish I'd sent that into him.
But you have a consistent photo face. You know, Rob McElhenney's got the consistent selfie face. He does that thing.
Right. Yeah.
You've got a consistent smiley, here I am, proper radio broadcaster's face. So there you go.
I never knew that, but I'm pretty damn sure having a radio broadcaster's face is an insult.
Well, no, you're on a podcast now. It's fine. It's all good. We've got the visuals as well as the voice.
That's it. I was hoping to start some sort of fight between us over the whole podcast thing, but you know,
well, you've already declared Dragonheart as the oldest Wrexham pod on the planet.
Final Whistle is the oldest football podcast, full stop, in the world.
There you go.
Dragonheart's longevity has nothing to do with me. I've just jumped on it later.
You drew your battle line there, but it was in chalk, so we just rubbed it out.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. If I've learned anything from Donald Trump, it's that you should take the facts in, absorb them, and then dump them out and just say whatever you want.
You've been learning that from Andy Gilpin, one of Donald Trump's prime Welsh disciples. Just bringing it back to you for a second.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Press box etiquette. Who's the worst, and why is it Tommy Couse?
Well, tragically, at the racecourse, I'm in a different press box from him.
Wow. He's got his own press box, or
he's got his own press box where delicacies from the takeaways of the Northeast Wales area are brought to him. He's got it made in the shade, he has. It's the right up bang in the middle of the Wrexham Lager stand is the broadcast bench, and then right down the front row of the second tier on the left by the cop is the written bench. I was on there for ages on the very end doing the hospital radio. Not a good view. I never understood that Dave Lovett and Mark Curry always wanted to be the other, extreme end from me, and just realised probably why they sat there. I've just explained it, but I never understood because they were pretty much level with the 6-yard box at the cop end. And how the heck did they see what happened at the other end? I never understood that. But Tommy's an absolute disgrace. But you should have seen his middle class airs and graces coming out at Wembley for the FA Trophy final, and he was there wandering around with pomegranate parfait tarts and things like that. And you've got to try this. He's using his real voice when he was down.
That is his real voice. That's true.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to try this. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable, and it was it's shocking, isn't it?
Marford originally, isn't he? Yeah, that's a little known fact about Tommy, that he's from Marford, I think, isn't he?
Yeah,
is he?
He was unofficially Ryan Reynolds' estate agent for Marford not so long ago. People believe the rumours.
Press box is really different, I think, to how it used to be. I used to be fascinated when I started doing it with the likes of Mark Curry, Dave Lovett, Les Chamberlain, real professional journalists who knew exactly what they were doing and exactly what they needed. And I used to really enjoy. There was always this back and forth between everyone of who took that corner, like the sharing of information, which I don't hear as much now. And I don't know if that's because you get a lot of club media, like myself, who are actually giving a more biased version, or are maybe more interesting in getting something out live than checking the veracity of it. I remember getting a phone call at work from Dave Lovett the day after we beat Peterborough in the Cup in '97, because he'd heard something I said in commentary and he wanted to check it was right. And firstly, it wasn't. I realised when I said, "Did I say that?" It was a slip of the tongue. I added 10 goals onto how many Steve Watkin had scored in the FA Cup in his career. But I just like that. I like proper I'm not a journalist, but I like proper journalism and those sort of standards. And obviously, newspapers have a different method in a lot of ways now, don't they? And that not plenty of people have done great work at Wrexham, stopped doing it partly because they want to it's not what they got into journalism for. But I quite like that in the press box. You don't find that quite so much.
Sticking with the press box theme for a second. Have you? I know you've encountered some problems in some places.
Yeah.
Boreham Wood and Kings Lynn. Now let's. We're not in the same division now, so we can roast them a little bit. It's fine.
Oh, excellent.
The Boreham Wood thing, tell us about it, and the Kings Lynn thing, just tell us about both, because the Kings Lynn was very well documented, and what happened there was Mr. Cleave deciding to let the press corps travel down, only to then say, "You're not coming in, lads."
I mean, the tragedy of both clubs, really, for me, and I'd lobbed over in with that, which always feels unwelcoming when I've been there, is that the National League fails to have consistent rules and sometimes doesn't stick to all those rules, even when they have them. And it can allow one rogue person to damage the name of a club. Because you go around and you talk to club media at other clubs, so they come to us, and nobody's got a good word to say about Boreham Wood. But it's only one person making it like that. When I've been to Boreham Wood, they're lovely. The first issue we had, well, he sent a letter around, an open letter, didn't he, saying, "Oh, I've calculated that there's X number of hangers on, and that we're losing £10,000 a game." So I was thinking, really, mate? Really? That many freeloaders? Really? And so I'm going to be charging this, charging that, doobie-doo. I'm thinking, just if you genuinely think that's true, which you didn't, just tighten up your entry procedures. Don't leave the door open. So it's like, again, The Simpsons, isn't it? It's when they go through all the security locks in the nuclear power station, and then they find the back doors open and there's a dog wandering in. It's that sort of thing. It was just bull. And the first time we played there, the club rightly said they're not going to pay. And I sent them a real stinking letter, really, really, really saying this is an utter disgrace. And the person in the club that picked her up phoned me up and basically apologized for what they were doing and said, "I'll get you a ticket in the away end. I can't get you in the press." No, don't. He said he would get me in the press box. But I was, part of my complaint was I've already bought a train ticket to go down. And I thought, that's a decent chap. And then I started thinking, I'm not going to take him up on it because he could get sacked if they find out. So I didn't. But I went in the away end instead. But, there's lots of good people. I mean, the Kings Lynn thing, I didn't actually travel over, but they were told the second time that they couldn't, at first they couldn't come in, but then when they let them in, that they couldn't commentate. And Cleave said, I'll have somebody watching you all the time. And if you try to commentate, you're getting kicked out of the ground. Now, when I was told this, I was back here, but I did have a stream of the game. And I said, shall I do a commentary? And just say what I think. And rightly, the guys at the ground said, well, no, because they're probably looking at our website as well. And when they see there's some sort of commentary coming out, they will kick us out, and it's a total waste of time for them. So I didn't. But what we did agree was that at 5 o'clock, once the game was over and the press stuff was over, I did a ranting podcast saying about what they'd done, because they it was after the game. They can't kick us out. It's just embarrassing. But the National League's got to carry the can for a lot of this. That near the end, they seemed awfully glad to have us and sad to see us go. I think sincerely, but in the years leading up to that, I didn't feel the league itself made us welcome. An awful lot of clubs did. I think it was we came across an awful lot of good clubs and an awful lot of good people. But the National League, I'm sorry, you're virtually a professional league now. You've got to say these are our rules. Stick with them. What if Boreham Wood come up and the owner starts doing the whole, well, we do it this way to the EFL? What the hell's going to happen then? Because they're not going to back down. I don't think he's going to back down. That'd be a bloodbath. I hope to go up. That'd be great fun, wouldn't it?
Bloodbath of Boreham Wood by Mark Griffiths. That's the autobiography.
Yeah, how about Bloodbath at Bromley? That game, the very first game, remember that first game of the Gary Mills era at Bromley? I mean, they're so friendly at Bromley. They're really nice. And they were saying to me, they said, "Oh, but you won't enjoy Boreham Wood." They said there was a fight in their director's box when they played Boreham Wood in the playoffs, and it was like, Bromley, friendly place. You know what I mean? It's like, for them to have a punch up there must have been pretty tasty.
Best and worst press boxes ever that you've ever experienced, and I include size, quality, pre-match food and drink, the general overall arching theme. I always think Brighton was quite high up for me. Brighton was pretty good. Worst was for me probably Bath City when it was behind the glass. Wasn't a fan of that.
Yeah, I hated behind glass. I think you're right. Brighton was really good. And the first time we went to Wembley was really good, saying about food, because it was an FA catered event. And I'm not like some bloke who's come up from the little town in Wales. Oh, look, free chips. It wasn't that. I'm fully. Oh, fair enough. I'm fully capable of handling myself in an actual restaurant, But I was impressed by the stuff they had. And I thought, oh, this is very nice. But then when we went there for the playoff, it's funded by the National League, isn't it? And I was like telling people, oh, you're going to love this. Oh, man, I tell you what, Wembley put on a spread. But it's a National League had gone, right, what's your cheapest menu? All right, if you did half of that, could we pay a quarter of the amount? And I always remember so clearly, it was supposed to be fish and chips. And the fish was like a sort of 2 centimeter square piece of fish. And the chips, oh man, they had paper cones, and there was a lad, a trainee, Wembley trainee, with a pair of tongs and these big thick cut chips, and this woman standing behind him, going, maximum of 3, maximum of 3, and she was every single time. People go, remember 3, and he's putting 3 chips in. I was walking off thinking, stuff this, but then of course the FA Trophy against Bromley, you've got old middle class cheese wandering around with his fancy tarts and stuff, haven't you?
There you go. Another reason to get out of that godforsaken division is your 3 chips and your 2 centimeter piece of fish.
There you go. And then Macclesfield, sometimes I used to go there and quite like it. And sometimes I used to think, this is just a plank nailed across from wall to wall. It's not that great. Guiseley was fun because they had weird slanty desks, and then they were all this one really long row. I've got a picture of me wedged underneath it because I tried to go under and back in underneath it. And I also had a really good argument at Guiseley once, which was weird. I think the bloke was a bit stressed with hindsight, where he tried to move me 10 minutes before kickoff when I had loads of stuff plugged in. And he started shouting at me and saying, I was like, who do you think you are? I am Guiseley Football Club. So I started shouting, I'm Wrexham AFC. It was brilliant. It was like King Kong and Godzilla standoff. Beautiful. I don't buy press boxes.
Reminds me of a forest green press bloke I saw. He was wearing forest green coloured trousers, which I was quite impressed by, actually. Where did he source those?
That's a bold move, usually only seen on an Outcast video. Impressive. I remember being a little, should we say, feisty fans who are too close to the press box for my liking when I'm spouting my pro-Wrexham nonsense. When we had 97 at Birmingham, oh, they were tasty. And it was I was in the front row of the press box, but there was a weird sort of slanted roof thing. And then the Birmingham fans, I don't know what it was. Maybe the press room was underneath or something, And I'm glad it was there, because when Devlin got sent off for trying to put his studs through Martin Chalk's knee, a crime so bad, even Martin Boddenham, the most meek referee of all time, gave him a straight red card. I just called it as it was. I didn't say anything remarkable, and the whole 3 back rows heard me and were turning around, and it was they clearly wanted to kill me. They were like all those undead people storming over the wall in Game of Thrones. They're all like limbs, and I was like, please no. And of course they couldn't get to me. But I remember at Crawley having this really angry bloke who looked like a retired docker, because of course Crawley's all about the sea, innit? He was just sitting there with these huge tattooed arms, and he wasn't happy because there weren't enough press seats, so they put me next to him, and he was just like growling at me all through the game. I did my usual thing when I think something bad's going to happen, of really being flattering beforehand in an attempt to butter people up so they don't hit me during commentary. And it half stuck with him, but not fully. And he was like,
I'll be amazing if he's still there when we go back in a few weeks. It would be brilliant.
It wouldn't.
Or you again.
It wouldn't. Trust me. Look, he'll have been in so many knife fights since then. I don't reckon we're going to come across him, to be honest. And Millwall's terrifying.
Yes.
As terrifying as it should be.
Yes.
The only time I ever went on the fans bus down, because I always thought I won't go on the fans bus because I won't arrive in time to set my equipment up. But one time was the Millwall when the bus driver didn't realise it was Lord Mayor's show, and we arrived at 3:15. And the receptionist, he definitely, deliberately kept me talking because he knew I was desperate to get in because I'd missed 15 minutes of the match. And I was just like, but again, he was scary. So I was just like, look, can I come in though? You've checked all my credentials. You've seen my name on the list. Can I come in? Well, hang on a minute, son. And then
you showed your ID card. He put a knuckle duster down on the desk.
That's it. Yeah. I raise you. Yeah.
For the avoidance of doubt, we have Mark Griffiths on the pod and not Ray Winston, just in case you're not viewing this on YouTube. But it's a good impression.
When a fan stops, stop. He says in the most unconvincing voice, doesn't he?
It is.
He always goes like, oh, don't gamble. It'll be awful. Wink.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd buy that more. I'd buy that more for sure. Mark, we could talk forever. I think we'll definitely have to get you on for like a second part or a third part or a fourth part or whatever point. But a few more questions for me, then we'll wind it down with a bit of a prediction-y type thing. Did you curiously, obviously you get the team sheet, you look at them, you've studied your players. Is there anybody, any particular player you thought, I'm going to struggle with that pronunciation, so I'm going to learn it? And then when you've gone to say it, you've completely butchered it.
Kyriakopoulos on Sunday.
Anna Kay.
There's a recent one.
Yeah,
I was annoyed at myself because I love language. I'm an English teacher. I love other languages as well, and I always like sort of like looking at pronunciations and just thinking a bit and thinking I want to try and get this right. And I thought her name was actually very easy to say, and then when Ashley came to say it the first time, it was just I think I called her Phil Coleman, I think. But I after that I was all right. But the worst thing is when you're doing it, and I've not had this happen often, but I've definitely I'll admit to having this happen. You start commentating and you're talking about the other side's left back who you've never seen play before, Morris, and then about half an hour into the game, you'll have a little look down and realize his name's Andrews. I've done that a couple of times. And it's horrible. I really feel bad about it when I do it, but because I'm sort of I no matter how much I look at them, it still feels like it's a fresh thing when you see them in the actual game. So there's still a bit of a process of just going through those names as we're going along, trying to get them stuck in my head so I don't have to look down. And occasionally I'll manage to get the wrong name stuck in my head. And that's quite embarrassing. Luckily, of course, I'm primarily broadcasting to Wrexham fans who don't care what anyone else's names are. Although I did once. Oh, sorry.
Most, just before I forget, really, pre-Hollywood, most surreal moment you've ever commentated on. For some bizarre reason, I've got Stephanie Booth's Golden Envelope in my head.
Oh, that's nice.
As a potential one, and I'd love to know how you commentated on that. If that's an obvious one, unless there's anything else that trumps that.
I don't think we were doing halftime commentary at that time, so I don't think I commented on it, and I don't know what I would have done because I did feel a bit dubious about it, to be frank. So I'm pretty sure I didn't commentate on that. Surreal moments. I swear to God, nobody remembers this, but I swear it happened. Vince O'Keefe playing in goal for Wrexham. Ball's in the other side's penalty area. They launch it long, just goes flying over our defenders, and it's bouncing slowly to O'Keefe. He's standing on the edge of the area, obviously impatient, and just decides to step out of the box, pick the ball up, and step back into his penalty area. And then when the ref, funnily enough, gave handball, he went nuts, as if to say, well, nobody was near me, so it's okay to do that. That's sort of, I can only assume that was his argument. I'm speeding the game up here, mate. But he just took a big step and picked her up and walked back. I was like, what the heck is going on? And of course, he's the one you've obviously seen the Mansfield mix up with Phil Hardy.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is absolutely not Phil Hardy's fault in any way, shape, or form. Just as he passes the ball a yard to Vince O'Keefe decides to look at the pitch and shout at a teammate. It goes through his legs. It's just, oh God. He was a gift that kept on giving. We also, the obvious one, but I apologize, I've said this a long time, so I'll keep it short, is the time and again Andy and I were commentating at Kidderminster 2003, the season we went up. And there was a gust of wind. The stand opposite the main stand had been knocked down to build the one that's there now. They had scaffolding for the cameras, and the big gust of wind, the stand was there to protect it, and the scaffolding landed on the pitch. Thank God nobody was filming it from there. And thank God the play was on my side of the pitch, because people could have been really badly hurt. But the game was held up for about 20 minutes, and we were live. And luckily, oh gosh, bless her, there was this little old lady sitting right in front of us who seemed to think, and I don't understand this, because clearly this is where all the away reporters were, or commentators. She seemed to think we were talking to her, not commentating, and she was constantly turning around and chatting to us during the game. And we, like the well-brought-up boys that we are, didn't want to be rude. So we started sort of, when she said something, we'd start sort of responding to it, but in a commentary way, so that the listeners didn't think it was odd. So she'd turn around suddenly and say, "Ooh, our left back's playing well today, isn't he?" And I'd be going, and Wrexham really have to watch out for that Kidderminster left back. He really is doing a good job up and down. He's really working hard, because we didn't want to upset her. And then when that happened, the scaffolding falling, she suddenly became our secret weapon, because we interviewed her essentially without her probably realizing for 20 minutes about how Kidderminster's season has gone and which players she thinks are playing well today. So that was quite fun. And very shortly afterwards, the game was stopped again. And I think I was on my own in this one, because a burger van outside Preston's ground caught fire. And so they had to stop the game again. And it was like, what the hell's going on? It's what's following me around, this is. I was also, I did a pre-season game, which I don't understand. It was a mix-up. I used to do for Marcher Sound. I used to do Wrexham games. They sent me to Porthmadog for a pre-season match. The station had clearly misunderstood the nature of it. It was Porthmadog first team, Wrexham reserves, and Blackburn youth team in a triangular competition. The Marcher thought it was us playing Premier League Blackburn, so they sent me along. I was about to point out to them what it was, and I thought, hang on, I'll get paid £25 to do this, so I didn't. Had a nice day in Porthmadog. Went in. Porthmadog were thrilled. They'd just put in new press facilities, and they wanted me to enjoy them. Their chairman met me at the entrance to the turnstile, because they, wow, we got an actual radio station coming. This is great. Brought me into the changing room, introduced me to the Wrexham reserves. People that I knew, like Sean Pedgick, and I'm like, hi. And they're like, why is he being introduced to us? Then he took me into the Blackburn youth team's changing room, which, as a teacher, I felt a bit uncomfortable with. I'd done the training. And I was there, all these poor lads who didn't have a clue. This bloke's being paraded in front of them like the bull at Hereford. And then I said, okay, so all I need is a phone. In those days, that's all we needed. And they said, "Oh, we got new press box. We don't have any phone lines in it." I was like, "That's an issue." And they said, "Oh, we do have one phone with a view of the pitch. It's in the announcer's box, which was a really narrow shed on the far side. That was the only thing on that side of the pitch." So they sent me in there, and the problem was the announcer wasn't there, so there were no announcements. But there was a phone, and I wasn't doing commentary. I was just getting, March Sound would phone me up every 15 minutes and ask me to give an update. And the phone would ring, and then people started talking to me in Welsh, and my Welsh is not good. And I'd have to explain, hang on. and they'd say, what time's the game finishing? And it was because it was like the sort of office phone as well. And like people who wanted to pick up their kids were calling to ask what time the game ends. I was like handling all these mad phone calls while trying to do 15-minute reports. It was different, really different.
I bet, without a doubt. Oh, crazy times, crazy.
And a couple of weeks later, went to Bramall Lane, my phone rang in the press box, picked her up, and a bloke tried to order pizza off me.
Nice.
Literally 2 weeks later.
Did you go along with it? Did you go along with it?
I sadly didn't. I'm so angry at myself. I really should have done that, shouldn't I? And you say about Geraint's getting angry. The most angry I'd ever see him was when he tries to order the pizza for the coach back, because consistently the people who work at Domino's do not know where the local football ground is. The best one was Alfreton, which we passed on the way to the ground, and which you could actually see from the ground. Inside the ground, you could see the Domino's. And Geraint phoned him up, and he said, please, could you bring a pizza to the football ground, which was literally about 75 metres away. And the lads goes, there's no, what football ground? And Geraint went nuts at him. It was beautiful to watch.
I'm surprised he didn't march over himself and collect them in person.
Yes, yeah, probably. He probably did at half time, didn't he?
Don't incur the wrath of the parry, that's for sure. Have we discussed Cop News, Liam, before I came on?
Yes, we've been through the running order, and I believe we're on predictions for Stockport, of which I have Mr. Gilpin's. If I think it's from a Republican convention, it's come through live from, and he's going for Stockport 1, Wrexham 2.
Nice.
Who wants to take the mantle next?
Oh, we've got to give it to Mr. G. Pride of Wrexham, voice of Wrexham. We've got to hand it over to him.
Well, if Mr. Gilpin hadn't shot off to whatever rally he's attending, I would have been able to confront him with the fact that when he was in the Wrexham Mail, he asked me and a couple of other people to be in a prediction league, and my moniker was Mark Griffiths, Wrexham Supporters Association. And I thought, okay, if I'm in the paper every week predicting Wrexham lose, the Sports Association is going to get slaughtered, isn't it? Because there'll be people complaining, oh, why does the Sports Association think we'll lose? Oh. So I never put us down to lose once in the whole season. It was quite a poor season. And as you can imagine, I finished bottom of the league by a distance, constantly putting these optimistic comments like, I know we're fourth from bottom, but I think that this away game against runaway leaders Luton Town is exactly what we need to put ourselves back on track. Luton 0, Wrexham 4.
You finished top of the Optimism League. That's
yeah, exactly. I don't like doing predictions, I'm afraid. So I'm just going to say I think it'll be a jolly nice game and we'll all have a lovely time.
I'm going to take that as a 5-0 victory to Wrexham. I roughly translate as that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I came on fresh from a Stockport podcast, and they were a bit like me, quietly confident. They were keen to point out that they are awful at defending set pieces, which I think a Hayden Tozer combo is long overdue. So I fancy that. Fancy Mullin to crack when he was a bit rusty last week. I fancy that to happen. I'm going to go with 3-1. I just am. And I've said Akil Wright will get sent off. I don't know why. I just find it mental that he's established himself in this Stockport rearguard. But who knew John Walters was going to become an international? So anything's possible. So yeah, 3-1 is my slightly outlandish prediction. I feel like I should temper it. I feel like I should be one of your students and be a bit more measured in my approach. And have you in the background, like, you know, the little devil and little angel on the shoulder.
Yeah.
3-1. No. It's probably going to be a 0-0 draw. And
my
voice again away.
Why not just predict that we'll win 3-1, but it will be quite wet? You know, so there's positives, negatives, take out the day. You know,
it's uncovered as well, isn't it? We're all going to get drenched.
Well, am I not right in saying Stockport haven't given us that bit of the ground? Haven't they only given us the seats right in the corner, and they've not given us the away terrace? I believe them, right? That's what I've been told.
Yeah,
I think that might well be correct. My prediction, I I feel like most Wrexham fans don't find it fashionable to say that we shouldn't win away, but I quite like the view that a point is a good result away from home. I think it's going to be quite a feisty atmosphere because they seem to think there's a rivalry there. I don't count them in my top 5 rivalries. Probably, are they in my top 10? I don't know, but I'll go for 1-1.
I'd take that. I think the longer we go unbeaten since Milton Keynes, the more we establish ourselves as being right up there at the top. And this is one of the toughest away games probably we'll have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So
it's fair, you know. Let's just
take it, but I don't want it. I want to win.
Let's assume Reece Williams would probably go for a Wrexham loss because he usually the grades, and they so.
Who is Reece Williams? Who is that?
Lesser spotted Jason Mohammed impersonator, currently swanning around France, in the hope that Wales will reach the knockout stages of the Rugby League. So yeah, right. I think we've covered most bases for now, but I feel there's loads of unanswered questions. I think we will come back to revisit with you at a later stage when Andy isn't firing off empty rounds into the sky in support of Mr. Trump. He's gonna
not protecting a polling booth from undesirables.
Andy OG, sort of Andy G, Andy OG gilpin. Oh dear me. Storming Capitol Hill as he did.
I saw him with his big horns. Aye.
Yeah.
Bombshell.
Yeah. We always like to leave on a bombshell. Well, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, I don't know how we've turned Gilpin into a raging MAGA.
Burner.
Yeah, never mind. It's one of those things, isn't it? I'm sure he'll take it in good grace, probably. Right. I think that's everything, isn't it, Ian? We got anything else on the list? Is that the lot? That is the lot. Happy days. Right. Well, Mark, thank you so much. It's been thoroughly enjoyable. I don't think we were expecting anything less, to be honest. Yeah, it's just been great. It's fascinating. It's even for the likes of us. We hear you, we see you, and from a sort of content creatory point of view, I think we've got to hold our hands up and thank you for all the hours you put in. It's not easy, you know. It's not easy to even put something like this together. It takes a bit of effort because you want to package it quite nicely and make sure people enjoy it. So you know, you should give yourself a big pat on the back for all the hours, endless hours that you put in to everything you do. So yeah, I think I speak on behalf of the lesser spotted Williams and the Rootin' Tootin' Gilpin in saying that.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has. It's been great fun. But yeah, it's I admit the football thing is time consuming, but you know, it is Wrexham, so it's a pleasure.
I mean, there's worse things to talk about in the current climate. I mean,
exactly.
You know, it was a hard sell during the COVID season and everything else, but you know, I'm a firm believer every club has their time in the sun, and we're having ours. So
exactly.
long may it continue. So yeah. On that note, I think we'll say goodbye, Liam, and then you can hit stop recording. But yeah, so cheers, and we'll see you all again next week.